you had a particularly tough relationship or somebody that you really loved and you're having a hard time getting over them. One of the worst things you could do is what most boys want to do, which is either go on a rampage and just fuck a bunch of girls to kind of numb the pain, right? And to kind of get that temporary validation. That's one. And you'll see that, and that's highly destructive. The other, and you'll see men and women do this, is quickly jump into another relationship. And what happens is when you quickly jump into another relationship, you don't ever heal from or deal with the original wound or process. You just put it on a shelf somewhere and you numb the pain because the needs that were lost from the first relationship are now being met to varying degrees by the new relationship. But what ends up happening, and anybody who's gone through this can backtest this for themselves to tell whether I'm full of shit or not, by relationship 3, maybe 4, it may have been the lightest of the relationships. It was not that serious. I don't know if I really loved her. I don't know how we were into each other. That breakup is like, it just destroys you. And then you're like, whoa, why is this the relationship that I'm so fucked up over? And I know from coaching a lot of these people, it wasn't the 4th relationship, it was the first relationship. You just never dealt with the first relationship. So it started compounding relationship after another. And by the 4th one, the weight is so heavy, it just feels like it breaks you and you're confused thinking, dude, we only dated for like 6 months and I wasn't even that serious with her. Like, why is this such a heartbreak? Because it wasn't her, it was the first one. You just never dealt with the first one. The work first is what not to do. Don't do those things. Do the inner work, right? Like, relationships are one of the best ways to grow because the intimate relationships act like a mirror. They're reflecting back to us who we are, sometimes very painfully and very powerfully. And so it gives us an opportunity to grow and change or not. And so the pain related to that also has a lot of reward to it in that you can grow much faster with those kinds of relationships. So if you have a relationship that ends prematurely, or at least by your estimation, integrate the work. What did I learn? What could I have done better? What made this relationship so great? Why did it ultimately fail? And then learn to let the person go, right? First, learn to love yourself enough to let the person go. There are 8 billion people out there. Making your life about a single person, although very normal, I would humbly offer, is fairly naive and foolish. Take the time to figure out what in you loved something in them or what you thought was love. More often than not, we confuse love for meeting a need though. And that was my point earlier is we get into a relationship with someone and when we break up, it's not that we can't get over them, we can't get over what they did for us, right? They met a need in our life that we want, we crave. And for men, a lot of times it's validation. I wouldn't say men, I'd say boys. We live in a society where boys are raised by women pretty much all the way through adulthood. Most teachers are women, most boys are raised by women, and there's an ingrained desire for female validation. And so boys behaving in that way are seeking validation from their ex in many cases, or the female in their life. And so when that's taken from them and they haven't dealt with that wound, they're constantly going back seeking that validation. I would humbly offer, man goes to woman to offer his strength, his protection, his provision, not to get it. Do not go to woman for validation. That is a fool's errand on many levels.
What do you think is the difference between men and boys, like specifically?
There's a rite of passage that humanity has taken men and women through for most of our history that is really lacking in our culture currently. It's this rite of passage from going from being a boy to being a man. Now, to be fair, throughout history, some of them can seem very barbaric. Some of them can seem dysfunctional or even abusive, and I'm not advocating for any of that. But I would say there is a process, war has been a process of boys becoming men, one that I tragically would hope that isn't the path that we have to take because it also has a residual negative effect. If you see pictures, for instance, from boys who fought in World War I and World War II, and I am saying boys, when they went in, they looked like boys. When they came out, they looked like tired men. And some of that tragically, and I'm not advocating for that, but there's the 3 confrontations in life: confrontation with oneself, with others, and with nature. And part of the rite of manhood is transitioning from being a boy to being a man, is confronting yourself, dealing with and solving you, right? Confronting your fears, confronting your insecurities, and learning to take responsibility for who you are, knowing who you are. If you don't ever do that, as a boy, you're asking the world to tell you who you are. You're asking for a woman to tell you who you are. You're looking for validation out there, and you behave like a boy. Boys behave like, these are characteristics of boys. They blame everyone else for the problems in their life. They don't take responsibility. They're far more interested in taking than giving, right? And they're seeking validation from other people, when in fact, the world is going, no, I'm not going to tell you who you are. You tell me who you are. That's the rite of passage, when you own who you are and you take and own your identity. Very hard to do if you're constantly seeking the validation of others. And specifically for boys, they tend to seek the validation of the feminine.